Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. Thank you for joining us. My name is Jeremy Burton. I'm the Executive Director of the Jewish Community Relations Council of Greater Boston. The path to peace for Israelis and Palestinians can often be frustrating. At JCRC, we derive hope and inspiration from the robust efforts of thousands of Palestinians and Israelis who are living in the region and are working together every day in pursuit of a more peaceful and promising future. American Jewish communities and civic leaders have an important role to play in this effort. JCRC's initiative, Boston Partners for Peace, is a movement connecting local leaders here to grassroots Israeli and Palestinian peace builders. We believe that a fundamental component of creating the conditions to resolve the conflict between Israelis and Palestinians is to invest in partnerships that weave relationships among the two societies. One of the organizations that we have come to know and admire who are doing this important work is Women Wage Peace. Women Wage Peace is a grassroots organization that brings together women from across Israeli society, Arabs and Jews, religious and secular, Bedouin, Druze, and so on. They are committed to bringing a just and agreed upon resolution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict through nonviolent means. Recently, they have announced a partnership with a newly founded Palestinian sister organization, Women of the Sun. I am very happy to have with us today Layla Alsheikh from Women of the Sun and Vivian Silver of Women Wage Peace, who will share more with us about their organization's work and their partnership. We'll start with a brief presentation, and then we'll get into Q&A. A reminder for our audience to please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom screen to submit questions. Layla Alsheikh is a peace activist born in Jordan. She currently lives in the village of Batir in the West Bank. She has been an active member of the Parents Circle and will be familiar to some of you here as she previously spoke with us last June on behalf of that organization. Vivian Silver is on the Central Committee of Women Wage Peace and has been active in social change work for the past 4 decades, from her native city of Winnipeg, Canada, and since 1974 in Israel. Before joining Women Wage Peace, she co-directed a Jewish Arab nonprofit organization based in Israel's Negev, and was awarded the Victor J. Goldberg Prize for Peace in the Middle East. We will include both of their full bios in the chat. Layla, and Vivian, thank you for joining us today, and Ramadan Kareem to you, Layla. We'll begin first with Vivian.
Thank you, Jeremy, and thank you to your wonderful staff for the invitation and for this opportunity. I think Layla and I would like to start this with a kind of uplifting movie clip of pictures from an event that took place just a week ago. So if you can put that on, Lihi, that would be great. Okay, thank you. I realize now that for those of you seeing this for the first time, you may think that this was an event supporting the Ukraine. The colors are absolutely coincidental. The colors of Women Wage Peace are turquoise and white, and the colors of Women of the Sun are yellow. So it just turned out coincidentally that it looks like it's in support of the Ukraine. Some of us do, some of us there, but that's not the point. This was the launch of our partnership between Women Wage Peace and Women of the Sun that took place on March 25th in honor of International Women's Month. And Layla will speak more about the event and more about the partnership. I want to give you a little bit of background. Jeremy mentioned that Women Wage Peace was founded in 2014 in the aftermath of the 2014 war with Gaza. I should say that I'm a resident of and a member of Kibbutz Be'eri, which is located right on the border of the Gaza Strip. So this having been the third war in space of 5 years in 2014 was really a breaking point for many of us in this region, but it apparently was kind of a straw that broke the camel's back for women all over the country. So women got together spontaneously. 20 women called a meeting in Tel Aviv and said, enough is enough, we have to do something. And launched the movement, the founding of Women Wage Peace in Sderot, which is right on the border of the Gaza Strip, at the regional college. I think we expected some 100 or 200 women there, but instead 1,000 women showed up. 800 of whom got on the trains all over the country, converged on, again, coincidentally, the train station in the middle of Tel Aviv that is called the Peace Station, Tachanat HaShalom, and began singing peace songs in the middle of the train station when the over the PA system came an announcement, please stop singing, which only encouraged the women more. I was not on the train because I was here in our region welcoming the astounding number of women that showed up. What we did from that point was build a grassroots movement transcending all political boundaries because we're a pragmatic movement. We're a movement that says peace does not belong to the left wing. Zionism is not the ideology solely of the right wing. We have common interests, and it is in all of our interests to promote peace and to break the decades-long paradigm that says only war will bring peace. We know that's not true. After so many wars in the last 7 decades, we understand and believe and are advocating now for a political agreement that will bring security to the people in our region. That's a break of paradigm, and that's our mission. We are a one mission movement, and that is to advocate and pressure our government, and Layla will speak about her side. I'm talking about, this is an Israeli movement, Women Wage Peace. We're talking about pressuring our government to break the stalemate and start negotiations for a political agreement with the full participation of women in the peace process. Okay. We receive criticism from all sides. We receive criticism from the left that we are not an ideologically pure movement of the left, and we receive criticism from the right that we are another extreme left-wing movement. So I guess in some way we can say that we have succeeded in placing ourselves in the center. We purposely do not advocate for a particular political solution. Rather, we talk about and focus on the existential need for a political agreement. I can list the 10 or 12 or 15 now different political solutions that line shelf after shelf in libraries all over the world. Whether it's the quartets or the Geneva Initiative or the Oslo Plan, or it really doesn't matter because nothing is moving forward. What we believe is that the leaders of both sides have to make an in-principle decision that they're going to move forward with negotiations and put them on the table until they reach an agreement. And that's why for us, Women Wage Peace, whether each of us has a particular agreement that we would personally like to see implemented, that's not what we're doing. We're advocating for a political agreement that is respectable and acceptable to both sides. So our strategies are to build as broad-based mass movement that will create pressure on our leaders to say, this is the time. We face many, many challenges, obviously. You know, with our last government, they were not interested in promoting a political agreement for ideological reasons, not willing to make the compromises that we may need to make in order to reach an agreement. Our present government, which is made up of a broad coalition of organizations from the right, center, and left, including for the first time in the history of this country, an Arab party is part of the coalition. They actually, in their coalition agreement, wrote that they would not promote a political agreement, a peace agreement, for fear of breaking the coalition apart. So for us, that's a big challenge because we're not giving up and we're not accepting that agreement as something that binds us. We feel that we have the right and the obligation to have our voices heard and to move the peace process along. And there's reason for optimism here, actually, because we see that actually Bennett has adopted, rather than a peace plan, the theory of shrinking the conflict. So there are all kinds of pieces that are happening now to ease crossing over between Palestine and Israel, and all kinds of economic projects that are being promoted. Our Foreign Minister Gantz has hosted Abu Mazen for the first time in Israel in a long, long time. And Lapid has done all kinds of things on the table and under the table to reach out to the Palestinians. So we are optimistic. We're optimistic in spite of recent events that have been more than distressing. I would like to say catastrophic. I don't want to say catastrophic, actually, because then we would lose hope. And we can't afford to lose hope. We have to keep going. And the most optimistic thing I can tell you now which is a segue into Layla's presentation, is that we have a sister organization, Palestinian sister organization, that has had the courage in the face of all these obstacles, internal in Palestine and in the Middle East, has had the courage to come forward and say publicly, we are supporting an agreement. We want an end to the conflict as well. So I suggest that we move to Layla and then have a back and forth.
Great, thanks, Vivian. Layla, I think that's your cue.
Good evening, and thank you, Jeremy, and thank you, Vivian, for your introduction. And as Jeremy said, my name is Layla Sheikh. I'm from a village called Batir. It's between Bethlehem and Jerusalem. I'm 44 years old. And I become peace activist from 5 years. Maybe some people will ask me why you choose this, and I will say that I lost my son in 2002 because of the conflict. He was just 6 months old when we tried to take him to the hospital, when the Israeli soldiers prevented us from taking him, and they stopped us more than 5 hours. So at the end of that day, he was died. And that was a big shock for me. Yeah, at that time I wasn't take revenge, but I was like take a decision. I don't want to have any kind of relationship with any Israeli person until I start to meet the Israelis in this organization. And for the first time, I looked at them as a human like me. We share the same tears, we share the same pain, even if we have different circumstances, but we're still human. And after I become a peace activist, I start to learn and understand a lot of things. And one of these things that we as women want to do something much more useful to our community, to our children, to make this future much better to our children and our grandchildren, and for all the people around us in both sides. Because God created us in this land not to kill each other. God created us to stand side by side, put our hands together and start to organize and do a lot of activities together. And this is where our thought or our vision came from to make this movement called Nisa Shams in Arabic, in English, Women of the Sun. And our vision is about that we are the women. We are not just half of the community. We are much more. We are the women who have the babies, and we take care of them. We take care of everything. And in this conflict, we like wait for 74 years until our leaders do something. They make our life much more miserable, unfortunately. So we said it's the time now for us to move, and we start to do something, because as mothers in the whole world, every mother tried to protect her children. Every woman tried to do the best for her family. And this is where our thoughts come from. So we start to think and start to have this vision from 2 years, but officially our movement start to existed last June. It means 6 months. We are a new organization, but we are like peace activists from many, many years. So we understand the situation. We know how this kind of organization or movement, and we know the women with peace, and we put our hands together to have many activities, to have many things together, because we know the power of the woman could do a lot of things. And we start to do that in that event in the Dead Sea. Just in 1 week, we could bring more than 200 women from Palestinian side, and there's much more than those women want to be, but unfortunately we just have a limited number at that time. And we told them, and all of them were know that they came and there were an Israeli woman, they will meet them with them and they will sit with them. And we start to explain for them what's this for and why we want to do this. And the event was really, really great. When you see the Israeli and the Palestinian, they met for the first time. Most of them, they didn't know each other, but since they met, they start like to talk to each other, to stand and speak about many things. And when you look to them, you feel like they know each other from a long time, and that it was amazing thing. We wasn't think this will be like so easy like that. And we start to talk about the mother's goal, like Vivian said, and this cooperation between us to show the whole people around the world, if we as mothers could join and put our hands together, we could do anything in this land. And we are the women who will bring peace for the whole nations, or our two nations. Maybe I will let the other things for questions, to let the others have a chance to ask us. So feel free to ask any question. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Layla, and thank you, Vivian. You've actually covered some of the things I was hoping to get into. You already started touching on several things, but I was hoping before we get into a whole range of topics, and I'm already seeing questions. We showed that video at the start, and I've actually been watching over the last couple of days some of the online sort of promotions and things that you've done around that event. And I'm hoping that you could spend a little more time talking about that particular event, what kind of discussions happened there, and maybe some of like what's coming out of that in terms of what both Women Made Peace and Women of the Sun are hoping or planning to do coming out of that particular and powerful event that you had last week.
And that day we signed our agreement between Women of the Sun and Women with Peace, that this agreement is about our sorry, I forget the word, like
Cooperation, I think.
Yeah, cooperation.
Okay.
And start our new future, both of us, to put our heads together, start to think what's the project we could do to the women inside Palestine, especially because, as you know, most of the women, they didn't have chance even to go to school, or some of them, they didn't have chance to have their own work. So we will like create small projects for them, start to teach them about many things, like to have new skills in their life. Maybe this will give them a chance to have like even a chance to improve their life. Especially some of those women are responsible about their family, like their husband, dad, or they are divorced and they have children. And this agreement included to bring the whole woman from all over the countries. It didn't like depend the color of their skin or their religion or whatever their background is. We want the whole women to be side by side, to put our hands together, to start to think what we need and what we want to show to the world. And this power, we believe that women could do a lot of things. So the agreement, we have another agreement that to bring 4 million women from both sides, and sign agreement and send that to the leaders to encourage them and to ask them and said, enough is enough. Now it's the time for you to have peace agreement We didn't want to lose our children. We didn't want to let this cycle of violence continue. We want to break this cycle of violence. We want to give them a chance to live as normal people.
Mhm.
What I would like to add here,
Yes,
Jeremy,
please.
is that I think I've asked Lee to post the mother's call, the text of the mother's call in the chat, so that people who are on this call can sign the mother's call as well and share it with your entire community. We're trying to get millions of signatures on our call to show our leaders that we are serious about our intention to get to a political agreement, and we expect them to step up to the plate.
We can certainly include that. If not in the if we don't get it in the chat, we can include it in the follow-up email. Vivian, if you could just clarify on that request for a moment. The mother's call, is that specifically for Israeli and Palestinian women, or is that for women around the world to sign on?
I think it's for women around the world. It's in support of our call to our governments.
Got it. Okay. So I realized, we sort of jumping ahead a little bit. And Layla has shared with us before, this is not the first time, the profound the loss and the sorrow of losing a child to the conflict, and how that has inspired, Layla, your journey from rejection of engagement to engaging with Israelis to now founding this organization. I'm curious, Vivian, for our audience, if you could share a little bit about what drives you and motivates you to this work as well.
Okay. A disproportionate number of our members are women who have lost their sons or their husbands or their fathers to the conflict. And that is a strong motivating factor to join the movement and to end the conflict. In addition, people say to me how strange it is for you who live on the border, who most suffer from the violence coming from Gaza. How can you, of all people, be such an activist? And I say it's because of that. And it's the same thing that people ask, well, now, in the last 2 weeks, look at all the terrorist activity that has happened. How can you be pro-peace? And I say, it's because of that I am pro-peace. The violence will continue as long as we don't reach an agreement between the sides. The situation in the West Bank and in Gaza, but specifically in the West Bank, because I don't want to get into a discussion of the Hamas. I have many friends in the Gaza Strip. Just as an aside, I spent many days in Gaza in my capacity as the director of the NGO that I was running in the years 1999 to 2000, 1998 to 2000, where we were running joint peace programs with Gaza like-minded organizations. So I have relationships with people there, and I know to differentiate between the people of Gaza and the leadership of Gaza, just like my friends, my Palestinian friends, can differentiate between the people of Israel and the leaders of Israel in many cases. So I think that we have more in common with each other, those people who are pro-peace on both sides, than some of us do within our own peoples. And that's what motivates me personally. Layla's talked about creating a better future for our children and our grandchildren. Well, I'm really greedy. I want a better future for myself as well. I don't want to wait for a future for my children and grandchildren, although that's very important. But I'm impatient. I want to see it now. And I just want to say, you know, when we signed a peace agreement with Egypt in 1979, and we signed a peace agreement with Jordan in 1994. And then in just 2 years ago, we signed the Abraham Accords. People here and there said it was impossible to do. There was no partner to sign an agreement with. Well, just as there was a partner then, there is a partner now, and let's check within our own side if we are a partner. It's not just looking at the other side and saying there is no partner. Let's look at ourselves and say, how do we become the partners we want to see on the other side? And Women of the Sun is just a glowing example of here. We have a partner.
A question for both of you, and come back. Vivian, in the intro, talked about the work of Women Wage Peace as putting pressure on the government of Israel to break the stalemate and to negotiate. And you just said, Vivian, about how you have a partner in Women of the Sun. So this is a two-part question for Layla. I guess the question is, and I'm saying this as an American, I'm saying this as an audience here in Boston that's probably mostly Jewish Americans. I haven't looked at the registration list. Help us to understand maybe how you're thinking, if you're ready to, about how one goes, how you are, not one, not us, but how you are going about building that pressure on the Palestinian leadership to, break the stalemate and to negotiate. What does that look like in terms of action, tactics, strategy for you? And then for Vivian, maybe if we can be a little more descriptive about what are some of the things Women Wage Peace has been doing, because I know that Women Wage Peace has been engaging in a sustained nonviolent protest against the government. And I think our audience would be interested to know what that looks like for your organization.
What we are thinking of, like, yeah, we want to sign like a paper and say to the leaders that we are numbers of women, and we will let thousands of women sign this paper, and told them that the number will increase, and you could find maybe the whole country sign this paper. Because as a mother, when I saw the soldiers came to my house 3 o'clock in the morning and wake up my children, ask them to leave the house, I wanted this to stop. I want to let my children and me, as Vivian said, to live normally. Why we should have, or why we should live under occupation until now? Why you will keep this life like this? We want to improve this. We want to, I don't have like a specific answer for this question, because we still like a new organization, and we still try to work so hard, because even I know that even because we are women, and even inside our community, maybe we will face many hard times, and many hard people who didn't want us to see the sun, really. Like they like to control us, they want to do this, but we have many difficulties. It's not an easy thing. Don't think that if we sign this agreement and go on the next morning and give it to the leaders, they will say, oh, okay, we will have peace with Israel. This is not the way it would happen, but we want to move. We didn't want to sit and wait until they have like an agreement and say, it's now the time to do it. Because when they make Oslo agreement, they didn't come and ask me or ask Vivian, what's your opinion? One morning we woke up and we find them speak about peace. What happened? And one day they will came and make war with, they didn't came to ask Vivian or ask me, what's your opinion if we want to make war? This will happen. So it's the time for us to move, to do something. Some people said or think, are you still like, didn't do anything for you? You are a peace activist for many years, what you achieved. Yeah, we didn't achieve something big, but what we achieved, we start to convince people. And if you start to convince your neighbors, your relative, your friends, one by one, side by side, we will be the whole country against the leaders. We don't want to be against them. We want to show them that all of us have the same thoughts. All of us have the same dream. All of us have the same thoughts. I don't think that anyone would like someone to knock his door and tell him, I'm so sorry, your son or one of your beloved ones is dead because of this conflict. No one like that. I know if we still have people who rejected peace, who said this will never happen, but I'm sure this will happen one day. I don't know when, but I don't want to sit and wait until that happens. I want to do this by myself, with my friends, with my relatives, with my neighbors, with my Israeli friends.
Thank you.
I think
Vivian?
maybe this is our mission and our life.
Mhm.
So I want to talk about a concrete step that Women Wage Peace has undertaken, and that is to work on a political alternatives first bill that has been actually submitted to the Knesset. And I'll just give you a little background about that. Following the 2014 war with Gaza, the state controller issued a statement claiming that the immediate rejection of any political alternatives to going to war were not even presented to the cabinet, preventing the cabinet from discussing any other possibilities, political possibilities, or the risks involved. And once he made that statement, Women Wage Peace formed a team and immediately started a process of formulating a political alternatives first bill, which will obligate the cabinet to discuss political alternatives before declaring war. And this bill includes three components. The first is to make sure there is a budget to develop and examine political alternatives that would be available for consideration in advance of any emergency situation. So that's building a base of knowledge and alternatives. The second component is to enforce and ensure there are discussions of these alternatives on an ongoing basis so that decision makers are aware of the alternatives before automatically declaring war, which is the knee-jerk reaction always in Israel. And the third is the monitoring on the part of the Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee that this law is being implemented, including publication of a regular report to the public. Now, we worked on this bill for a number of years, researching what is possible together with top security people in the country. And we have received their blessing for it, and then started working in the Knesset, and Emily Mawati, who is a labor member of Knesset, has taken upon herself to submit it to the legislative committee, and it's now sitting in committee. So we're very optimistic, first of all, that since it's being presented by the coalition, it will be passed into law, and we think that that is a major, major step in possibly preventing the war, a future war, once this bill is passed. Another thing that we've been working on, another issue we've been working on very closely with other women organizations, specifically Itach Maki, which is a women lawyers NGO, and that is to promote an action plan that would implement the United Nations Security Council Resolution 1325. You may know it as something else in America, but in Europe and in Israel, we know it as the first landmark Security Council resolution on women, peace, and security. It addresses the impact of war on women and the importance of women's full and equal participation in conflict resolution, peace building, peacekeeping, humanitarian response, and in post-conflict reconstruction. Israel was the first country to adopt the legislation, and it added an addendum of that concern to the Women's Equal Rights Law, which was passed in the early 2000s, which states that it's mandatory to integrate women from various groups on public committees and national policymaking teams appointed by the government. But Israel has yet to accept or implement an action plan. So Women Wage Peace is working very hard on submitting and pressing for a budgeted action plan for its implementation. So that's a second thing that we are working on. And another piece of good news is that Women Wage Peace was granted a special consultative status to the UN, which means that our movement will have the right to initiate and participate in events of UN organizations which are relevant to our activities, to express opinions and to broaden ties with organizations and countries with similar goals. So we're taking piece by piece and moving forward.
Great. And I just want to underscore something because it connects back to something you said earlier, the political alternatives first bill. I know you talked earlier about how the current government coalition agreed not to do certain things with regard to pursuing a peace agreement right now. And yet you're also pointing out, for those maybe not familiar with the politics, that there are in fact members of the governing coalition who are working towards women wage peace's priorities and agenda within the government and the Knesset, even if the government as a whole hasn't committed to it.
That's right.
Yet.
That's
Okay.
Right.
Layla, I'm hoping you could share with us a little bit, sort of like what challenges you're facing, what gives you hope, and then the same to Vivian as well. What you're navigating. Sorry, what makes your work challenging, and what makes it a cause for hope for you right now.
First of all, the challenges with maybe some people didn't like us because we are women group and they want like always have men in everything, and because we are women and they know how much the power that the women have and what the women could do. So maybe some of them were afraid and some of them will start to like fight us, and they already start to do it. And some of them, they start to threaten us. But we still have hope and we still have this courage to continue. Every morning when I look to my children's eyes, I promise them that I will do my best to protect them and to do everything that I could to make this life, not just for them or for me or for their children, for the whole people, not just the people who live here. Maybe we could teach the people around the world if we, the people who have this conflict from 74 years, could do this and could stand and be side by side and try to do everything together. So everything in this world will be solved. And one of the maybe one of the things that, to be honest, this time that we still didn't have money for our project. And
Right.
we start to talk to people from other organizations, from other part of the world to encourage us and to give us money to continue.
To that end, I don't want to end this program without asking each of you. I know Women Wage Peace is now, a number of years old, has become integrated into certain networks of peace builders or supporters of peace building. For you, Layla, how are you going about that work of connecting into those networks and those resources? And for both of you, certainly the question of what can we do as Americans, as Jewish Americans or civic leaders in America to support your work and to support work like what you're doing that is building bridges towards a better future?
Because maybe I was peace activist before, and I already start to have a relationship with many people around the world. And I start to talk to them, and even I start to talk to people here in Palestine who could or they have their communication with other countries or with other people who really want to help us to continue and to do projects, not just about peace, even to help women to be independent. So we have many thoughts, and we start to talk to them, to those people, and start to, maybe because now the problem is Ramadan and everything stops in this month. But even we still have meeting every 2 days or 3 days, start to put our thoughts, and we start to put planning for the future and what we will do next, what is the steps, what we need, what kind of people that we want them to join in this part of our movement, because we need people who have experience in many kind of fields. So, and as I told you, we need your help to support us, to talk to people about us, and to support us by money.
Thank you. Vivian?
Yeah, I just want to point out that the incredible successful campaign that the Alliance for Middle East Peace, ALMEP, carried out for 10 years, that has resulted in a $25 million grant program of the State Department for Palestinian and Israeli peace activities. So I'm very hopeful that both of our movements will be able to reap the benefits of some of that money that will allow us to carry on and grow our activities. I'm not sure if Layla mentioned that they already have 1,000 Palestinian women who have signed on to their movement, which is phenomenal because it includes several tens of Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. That's wow. Mind-blowing, I have to say. What makes me optimistic? The former Prime Minister of Ireland spoke at one of our conferences of Women Wage Peace. And he said, if anyone had asked him the week that the Good Friday Agreement was signed, if he thought it was possible that in the near future there would be a signed agreement, he said he would have scoffed and laughed people out of his room. And within 5 days, that peace agreement was signed, the Good Friday Agreement was signed. And, apartheid ended. The Rwanda Civil War ended. The Liberian Civil War ended. And women played a central role in many of these ending some of these conflicts, and are very active in the reconciliation movements in these conflicts that ended. So yes, I am hopeful that we will all be just as surprised as the former Prime Minister of Ireland when our agreement is signed. You know, even Menachem Begin, when he made his acceptance speech when he received the Nobel Prize in 1978, he said, war is avoidable, peace is inevitable. You know, and I think, wow, Menachem Begin, who you would never have thought as to be able to coin a phrase like that, that's what he said at his speech. And another quote that I want to share with you is one by Martin Buber, who said that behind every prediction of disaster lies a concealed alternative. And that's what makes me optimistic, that yes, we have disaster upon disaster, but maybe behind each one of those is a concealed alternative. And that makes me keep going.
Wow. That is thank you for providing us and me with that framework of hope and optimism. Layla, I'm gonna I don't know if you want to add anything to add as a closing for us, but before you do, I just want to note for our audience that Vivian referenced the USAID initiative. It's in the United States, it's known as the Nita Lowey Fund because of the leadership in Congress by the recently retired Congresswoman Nita Lowey of New York, who was the chair of appropriations. And we here in Boston at JCRC, we're very proud to work with the Alliance for Middle East Peace and others to champion that legislation and to urge Congress. And it will be amongst the many ways we intend to continue to stay in this work, that we will continue to engage and advocate every year as part of the budgeting issue at the federal government to make sure that that fund is, fully resourced to support organizations like yours. Layla, anything you want to add by way of closing?
Yeah, I wanna say something. Maybe I always say that we don't want anyone to pro-Palestine or pro-Israel. We want you to pro-peace, and this is what we need. And I want to really thank you so much for all the things that you work to support us, to encourage even us. Like when you do a meeting like this, that give us hope to continue and give us power to really know that some people care about us and they encourage us and they will think about us. So I want to really thank you so much.
And let's invite you to, when you bring your study missions from the JCRC Boston or national, to come and visit us, to meet us, to let your people know that there are people like us on the ground, and not just the people who are either passive or discouraged, but there are people like us, and we can be inspired by you, and we can inspire you on.
Well, thank you for that, and thank you both. And I think that brings us directly back to something Layla said earlier about the work we need to do to support your organizations and talk to people about the work that both of you and your organizations are doing. And Vivian, I will only say it is, while we haven't been able to travel in a while, and please God, inshallah, we will be able to do so very, very soon again. I know that whenever we've come from Boston JCRC, we've enjoyed meeting with leaders from Women Wage Peace and sitting down with the Parents Circle as well. And I look forward, Layla, to be able to visit with Women of the Sun as part of those visits as well, whether that's together with Women Wage Peace or as a separate visit. But just really thank you, both of you, for giving us hope and vision and the hard work on the ground of building peace and creating the conditions for peace. So thank you for being with us. For our audience to learn more about Women Wage Peace, there's a link in the chat, and we will include that as well in the follow-up email. If you want to learn more about JCRC's work, including our work with Boston Partners for Peace and our study tours, we'll include a link in the chat to that as well. I invite you to join us on April 14th for the next in our series of programs of speakers, which we continue a series we call The Story of Our Community, where I'll be sitting down with colleagues who are the regional and local professional leaders in Boston of our member organizations that make up the JCRC and who are showcasing the breadth of our community. It's an opportunity to learn about the diversity of our members and to lift up the valuable work being done by our network. Join me, please. We'll be sitting down next with Rob Lykin, the Regional Director of American Jewish Committee. A link to the registration is in the chat. Thank you all for joining us. And since it will be the 14th, I wish everybody a Pesach Sameach, a happy Passover. And again, Layla, and to anyone who's with us, a Ramadan Mubarak.
Thank you so much.